Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on rate labels. Today we're going to go through how to automate your billing process as your business grows. I'm Natasha Dabauskas-Reed and I'm from the customer success team at Actionstep. So today we're going to go through a welcome and introduction to rate labels, an overview of the topics that we're going to cover, and then I'm going to give a demonstration as to how we can use these rate labels in our system, and then a conclusion. Firstly, in this webinar, we're going to demonstrate how you can automate your billing process so that you're spending less time worrying about what you're billing your customers, and that we're making sure we're billing our customers the correct amount every single time. So we're not constantly going back and having to check and not spending time on that rather than actual billable work. The topics being covered today are: what are rate labels? Why would I use rate labels? What are overrides? How do I update my rate labels? What are historic rate labels? And can I update my time records in bulk? And that one's quite an interesting one because this is a new feature that we've introduced that I'll show you in the demonstration. Actionstep has several ways to set and manage your time fee entry billing rates. This allows each system role, timekeeper, billable participant, quick code or matter to have its own rate. Rates can be variable, so Actionstep utilizes a hierarchy of rates and overrides to ensure you can record time at the proper rates. So you are accurately recording the value of your time, leading to more time for billable work. This here is the hierarchy of rate labels, and it goes through the highest through to the least important. So this is a really good slide for you to keep and look at when setting rate labels so you understand which one overrides another. Historic rates display in time entries where rate or hierarchy has been edited or removed. For example, if a time entry has been saved with an AAA rate and the rate value is changed in billing settings, the value on the time entry will display as an historic rate. This applies to editing the rate value, deleting and merging into another rate, or removing rate value overrides. So essentially what this means is where we've recorded time using a specific rate label, and then we've gone through and we've actually changed our value for that rate label, we don't want that to go backwards and change all of our historic. What happens is those historic ones will show historic rate label and still keep the value that was attached at the time it was created. So as I explained before, there is a new feature, and that is our ability to edit time entries in bulk. So I'll take you through this feature during our demonstration. I'm now going to take you through the demonstration where you can see how all of this can be set up in your Actionstep system. Hi everyone, we're just going to do a demo now of some things that we can do with rate labels. So first of all, to access our rate labels, we go to Admin and then Billing Settings. Admin and then Billing. And we scroll down and we can find our rate labels here. So to create a new rate label, we click on Create New Rate Label and we type in a name for our rate label. So let's say I am going to be giving a lawyer rate label, and generally that's an hourly rate of $250 per hour. Now at the moment I'm just going to save that one down so it's an hourly rate. And we hit save, and that's created our rate label here. Now we might want to create a fixed fee rate label, and that may be for anything, which may be Okay, so when we open a file, it's $50 worth of time, let's say. And then we can do a customizable one. And that will be where it's variable and the user needs to enter in a variable rate. And we actually have that set up here under variable custom rate. So now when we go to enter time, if I go up here and hit enter time entry, then we choose a matter where we want to store that time. And down here you can see I can access those different rates. So I can see that if I choose lawyer, my default rate was set to $250, so I can put my hours in. If I go file opening, then it's a $50 fixed fee. I can obviously go fixed and put in a fixed fee, or do variable, and that's where I can pick a rate value and edit that. So that's how we start with our rate labels. We're now going to have a look at what happens if we need to remove a rate label. So you can see we've set up our lawyer at $250 per hour. Now I'm going to enter a time entry in matter 151. And it's just going to be research, and I'm going to do it at the lawyer rate of $250. I'm going to bill 2 hours, and that's $500. So we're going to save that down. Okay, that time entry is saved. Now I want to delete. I no longer want to use this lawyer rate, and I actually want to use a new label because I want to call it solicitor. So I'm going to create a new label for solicitor, and actually it's going to increase to $300 hourly rate. So I'm going to save that one down, but I don't want people using this old one anymore, so I'm going to delete it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge it into solicitor. So what happens here is that the rate values will remain the same on all those time entries. However, the label where it would say lawyer is going to be changed to solicitor. So just be careful if you are merging these rate labels that the label will actually change. Your underlying value will not, but the label will. So if I do that, and then we go and look at our time entry that we created, okay, you'll see that the rate labels changed to solicitor. However, my effective rate is still the same as when I recorded the time entry, which is the $250. And that's how you delete those rate labels. You do have to merge into another rate label. So just keep in mind that that label will change when you merge it. We're now just going to have a look at rate overrides. So there's many different ways that we can set up rate labels in Actionstep. So what we have is a rate override hierarchy so that we can know which rate labels we should apply in which situation. And you can set your system up in relation to these rate label hierarchy to make sure that the correct rate label is always being used. I'm going to take you from the least important to the most important. So then you can see how to set up and use these rate labels. So when we don't have any rate override set up, so for example, if I go to admin and then billing, if we scroll down, we can see I've set up 4 rate labels. And that's all I've done, just created new rate labels as I've shown you before. If I go to input a time entry, so my global create time entry, and I choose a matter, it defaults to admin purely because it's the first alphabetically. So all the rate labels will appear in alphabetical order, and fixed and variable will always appear last. Because these are user entered rates, they're not included in the overrides. So I can choose what rate label to use, and we move on from there. Next, we can apply a rate label to a system role. So if I go to admin and users and permissions, and I go to system roles, I select a system role, and I can use a default rate sheet. So let's say, for example, as administrator, I want to use a solicitor rate sheet. I can hit save. And when I go and create a time entry as the administrator role, system role, if I choose my matter, you'll see that I'm defaulted to solicitor automatically because that override's now in place. Next, we can set up a timekeeper rate. So if again we go to admin, users and permissions, and I choose myself, I can give myself a default rate label. Let's say I want to choose admin. I can then hit save. Oh, tick the box, hit save. Now if I go to create a time entry, I'm choosing admin by default. And the default rate for admin was what we set in the rate label at 150 per hour. Now I can also set an override on that default timekeeper rate. So again, if I go to admin, users and permissions, and I select myself. Now I still want admin. However, let's say my admin is higher than in relation to other people. So normally it was 150. However, for me to do admin on a file, it's 200. So we tick that and hit save. Now if I create a time entry and I choose a matter, you'll see my rate is now 200, just in relation to myself as the timekeeper. And that's really handy for when we may have one rate for a solicitor. However, different timekeepers have a different rate for that rate label. So you may have 20 different solicitors using that rate label, but they all may have different rates depending on how junior and senior they are in the organisation. So that's a way you can set that up. We then have client overrides, which means we can attach a rate to a specific client. So say, for example, Betty Y is my client on my file. If I go to her contact record and go to accounting, if we scroll down the bottom, we can see rate sheet overrides. If I enable that, I can say for Betty, actually, we want $50 for an admin rate for any files that Betty's associated with, she's the client for. So now if I go and enter a time entry for Betty, okay, the client rate is showing as $50. We can then have a quick code rate. So if we go to admin and then general settings, we can apply a rate to an actual quick code. So we're going to add the solicitor default rate to the clearing email. And make sure that time entries is ticked, otherwise you won't see this default rate label. So if we hit save, and I then go to create a time entry, you can see my client rate is there. If I then go clearing email, you can see it's defaulted to the solicitor rate because we've set that for that particular quick code. Now, our rate overrides that are at the top of our hierarchy is our matter rates. So if I go to matter 151, and I go to my billing and my matter billing options. And we come to rates. We can see what default rate label should be used on this matter. So let's say we want solicitor, and we hit save. If I go to create a time entry, we can see that the solicitor rate will be chosen for this matter. And that will be chosen by anyone who creates a time record against this matter. Now we can also go down and we can create custom rates. So the matter rate for a solicitor, let's make 250 and hit save. So now if I go to create a time entry, then my override will be solicitor at 250 because that's the top of my hierarchy. And lastly, I just want to take you through what historic rate means. So I'm in my matter here, which is matter 156, and I'm going to create a time entry. I'm going to do 4 hours, drafting document, and we're going to make that at a solicitor rate. So a default rate is 300 for solicitor, which is 1200. So I'm going to save that down. Then if we go to billing and we look at fees, we'll see that here. Now, if I then, let's say, I go through and I update my rates. So it might be the end of the year. It's 300. I'm now going to up it to 350 for the next year. Hit save. Now I'm going to go back into my matter. One, 5, 6. And now if I go and look at the fees, we'll see that time entry didn't change, which is exactly right. We don't want it to update. But if I go in and have a look, you can see this historic rate, because now it's telling me the historic rate was actually 300 and the new default rate is 350. So that's so it's keeping that historic rate within the matter. So if I go to enter a time entry, as a solicitor, I will see the default rate. So any new entries that I put in will be at the new 350 rate, but any of the old ones will show that historic rate so that they're keeping that, which is what we would expect. Unfortunately, I was going to take you through a new feature, which is changing our time records in bulk. And please know that that is on the way. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate that today, but we will send out a little demonstration as soon as it's released. Thanks everyone for tuning into the webinar. As normal, everyone who's registered for the webinar will receive a video recording so that you can keep that for future reference. We'll also be holding one of our free workshops after the webinar, so please make sure to register for that as there are limited spots. And if you ever have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to the customer success team at customersuccess@actionstep.com. Thanks everyone, and I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.